Please be aware that the meeting has been live streamed. As always, phones on silent or turned off, please. And remember to speak clearly, as always, into the microphones. Can I call for any apologies, please? Larry, you were here, so I think we're all here. Public forum, none is booked. Acceptance of late items. I think we have 2 late items included in the supplementary agendas that were circulated on Monday. 1 public and 1 for public excluded. Can I call for a mover and a seconder to accept those, please? Larry, thank you. Heidi, thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, and carried. Thank you very much. Recommendations. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Confidential business to be transferred into the open. I don't believe there is any. Change the order of business. There is none that I'm aware of. Confirmation of the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting on the 21st of August. If there's any corrections to those minutes, can we have those now, please? If not, can I call for a mover and a seconder to accept those minutes, please? Kelvin, thank you. John? Yes, John.
Sorry, and it's just to get confirmation. The process by which the points are recorded, it's a judgment call, yes? So various things are said in a meeting. The person taking the minutes records certain things. What's the process by which points are recorded, or is there a process by which a member can get a specific point recorded for the purpose of the minutes?
Yes, so there's a summary basically of what is said. There's no, we don't, he said, she said type of minutes. So they're basically a summary of the main discussion points that have come through. If a member requires something to be recorded in the minutes, they can ask for that to be recorded, their words to be recorded. During the meeting, you have to ask for that.
And of course, everything is recorded because it's live streamed. So hopefully that satisfies your question, John. Declarations. Beg your pardon. Did we had a seconder in John, I think, or was that your question? Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, and carried. Thank you. Declarations of conflicts of interest. There appear to be none. Deputations, presentations, petitions and recommendations from other committees, there is none. So the business, which is 10.1 on your agenda, the council appointed review and observer team. Christine, did you want to, or Marty? Thank you.
Your Worship, councillors. So further to the meeting on the 21st, at which stage council resolved to appoint a review and observer team to support them for the next 10 months in the performance of their governance role. The terms of reference have been drafted and are before you today for consideration and approval. Further, there's a list of and a summary of key decisions that council will be required to make through to the adoption of the long-term plan. That was a requirement sought by the DIA in their letter that we received several weeks ago. There's a breakdown of the budget of the cost of this process, which is attached, and so I'd be seeking council to resolve to approve the unbudgeted costs of this process. In non-public, council have been provided some recommendations in relation to the appointees, and so I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Marty. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Cloud.
Thank you, and this is to the Chief Executive. What would DIA's position be should we, after a period of perhaps 4 to 6 weeks, and this review and observer team comes in and sits down with us and goes through everything, after 4 to 6 weeks, if we as a council could commit that the primary issues were being dealt with sufficiently, therefore not requiring the ROT to continue for another 9 months, what would DIA's position on that likely to be? If we're able to, confirm and make sure that they understand that we're on the right track.
Yeah, look, I don't think I could answer that. I'd only be speculating.
Any other questions, councillors? Happy to move. Thank you, John. Can I get a... Sorry? Sure.
Would the chair be comfortable if we relax standing orders? I believe there was an email circulated by Councillor Clout last night, which I would like to see some discussion of. I don't know whether it's been tabled. Certainly wasn't tabled as a late item.
It hasn't been tabled.
Well, in that case, I'd like that email tabled and like to see some discussion of it, if that's possible. But
My natural inclination is to say let's just get through this as has been agreed. Terms of references, as I understand them, terms of reference have been agreed. I think that the expedient and probably the most practical way forward is to deal with the agenda items as we have them here today.
If we wish to move out of standing orders, can one of us can actually move and...
Well, can I
vote on it?
I mean, the Chief Executive just made a very useful suggestion, Kelvin, that if you wanted to introduce during the debate those issues, there's an opportunity for you to air those and for us to consider them at that time. I think that would be more than appropriate.
the trouble is with debate is there are some rules around them which actually prohibit discussion, i.e. you can only speak once unless you're granted permission by the chair, which puts the chair in an invidious position. If someone tables something at this late stage and effectively it provokes thought and discussion, then standing orders are an impediment to that discussion. I come back to the point, is it possible to table the report and relax standing orders so it might be discussed?
Look, I think I'd like to... The chair has been in an invidious position since October last year, so situation no change. So I'm happy for standing orders to remain and for the agreement that we have around conduct to continue in that way today.
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Larry. Can I get a seconder, please?
Can I get a point of clarification? Is it possible to move that the standing orders, is that the normal process, that somebody moves that standing orders are suspended, and if it's seconded and then there's enough support around the table, it is suspended? Is that how it works?
Perhaps I can help the meeting by saying that you can't suspend all standing orders, but you can suspend a particular standing order, and I think the one that you're talking about is where a councillor can only speak once to the motion. So you can move to suspend that particular standing order, and I will try and find that for you now, or Robin might have it. 21.5. So that is, you can't, it's not a blanket move, but you can suspend that particular standing order if you choose.
Councillor Baldock.
Just a further question. There has been suggestion that there is some item that could be tabled, but that has already been explained as simply an email from one councillor with some suggestions in it, which he's entitled to move in an amendment or whatever. There is no tabled report prepared by staff. There's just simply an email, and I don't think we should be discussing that any further except during the process of a motion being moved and people putting forward their ideas, as we always do.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we suspend standing order 21.5, that members may speak only once.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, so having done that, and the business is as it is before you, the recommendations A to F. As a remover, you have moved, Larry, and do we have a seconder, Heidi? I think you're a seconder for that. Did you want to speak to that, Larry, now?
Yes, I will, but it is contained in the report. We are where we are, following on from our meeting probably Friday a week ago. I appreciate the work the staff have done, particularly the Chief Executive and Christine, in drafting the terms of reference. I find them to be acceptable and will take us in the direction I think we all want to go. It does address what the Department of Internal Affairs has said that is of concern to them. And the people in the recommendations to become part of the review team, I think, are all very well qualified and very eligible, and I think the idea that the chair would make that choice is a good one. And so I think it's something we simply need to get on with and work with in order to deliver for the city what they desperately hope for, and that is good governance to take us through, particularly the LTP, which is what DIA have expressed concern about, where we make so many very, very important decisions, and that list that's been supplied to us here does just show the things that are in front of us that we have to deal with in the city, with the growth, the infrastructure, the amenities, and other issues coming out of COVID that we need to act responsibly about.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Morris, but Councillor Hughes is the second. Would you like to speak now?
Just to say that I'm looking forward to us being in a space with where we can move forward from here and continue with our work. And I'm really hoping that out of today comes a successful way forward that we can all agree on unanimously and get on with the job of working for our city.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to contrast the approach we're taking with Invercargill City Council, and of course a similar letter has been sent to Westland Council as well. The Invercargill City Council, in my personal view, seems to be taking a more relaxed approach to this, and it would seem from a casual observer that the goal is to get Department of Internal Affairs off their back. I would look at the process which has been outlined in front of us here, and I would say that as is the custom of our Chief Executive, this is a thorough process. And the goal, of course, should not be to get Department of Internal Affairs off our back, but it should be better governance for our city and for our residents. So I do support that. What does give me some pause, however, is a budget of about over $250,000 to try and address a significant governance failure inflicted on the city around this table. And I reflect, as a bit of a political junkie, I read everybody's candidate profile statements, including the candidates that aren't here. I looked at everybody's billboards and the election paraphernalia. And I don't recall any of us putting in our election paraphernalia that there would be a significant governance failure within 12 months and we would be required to get observers in. That's not the promise that was given to our community. So in that regard, when a promise is broken or a product does not meet the packaging under the Consumer Guarantees Act, the provider has to either replace, refund or repair the good in question. Now, I'm firmly of the view that I think replace would be the most efficient and cost-effective way of dealing with the issue. Others may not share that opinion. Refund, well, that's something that we need to consider because actually, we should be refunding our residents, not asking for more unbudgeted money from them to deal with our failures. Thirdly, repair. Well, that's essentially what the observer team's role is. But under the Consumer Guarantees Act, it's not the person who bought the product who has to pay for that repair. It's the producer. And so, the idea that this table would impose on our ratepayers $350,000 in order to repair a product that was sold to our community and then get them to pay for the repair does irk me somewhat. So in light of that, I do actually endorse Councillor Clout's suggestion, which I hope he'll speak to, which arrived late last night via an email, as a way of dealing with that unbudgeted expenditure and having an off-ramp after 4 to 6 weeks. I would prefer 4 weeks. One of the off-ramp options is for the Department of Internal Affairs to appoint the observers. The cost then would lie on the New Zealand government and taxpayer rather than our team of 55,000 ratepayers. So I look forward to what Councillor Clout has to say.
Point of order.
That's not correct. If the FDIA was to appoint their own observer team or in any form, we would still pay for that. Councillor Clout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so myself and some colleagues were very concerned. We had a chat last night, actually, when we saw the figure of $350,000. And so, with that in mind, I would like to suggest an amendment, and this amendment, we can discuss the wording of it. I've just emailed it through to Robin. I'll read the amendment, and if I've got a seconder, then I can talk to it. So it's basically a new F, and the current F will become a G. So the F simply reads that the council will review the continuation of the ROT following the submission of their first report due in 4 to 6 weeks' time. So that's the essence of my amendment. And if I've got a seconder, then I'll speak to it. Thank you. So, in speaking to it, when we first looked at the terms of reference and this concept of having a review and observer team, and I still think it's actually a really good idea, but when the actual budget came out in the report and the agenda, $350,000, I think ratepayers would justifiably be quite horrified that they are effectively paying the cost of our governance dysfunction. And so with that in mind, I believe that a check-in period or a potential off-ramp after their first report, because in the first 4 to 6 weeks, I imagine they will be sitting down with every one of us elected members. They'll be reviewing our performance to date. They'll be wanting to try to analyse where our issues lie, the causes of our issues, and also what collectively we believe that success would look like through this process. Because at the moment I'm a bit fuzzy about what does success look like for the 11 of us. And so I would say that after 4 to 6 weeks, collectively the ROT will have a good idea, as will we, to the nature of these issues and how we might progress forward. And if that was the case, after that 4 to 6 week period, we could then either continue on with this process till the end of June. That might be the collective will, and it might be the best outcome. However, another outcome could be that the 11 of us make a confirmed commitment to work collaboratively with each other in a professional manner for the remainder of this triennium. And that would hopefully be the end of that. That might also be in conjunction with an action plan that we all agree to foster our collegiality. And so if that was the case, I'm sure the ratepayer would applaud that kind of circumvented process and would impost the ratepayer a great deal less. And so that's really the nature of this amendment and the reason for it. But happy to modify it or massage it as required. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clout. Was it Councillor Hollis, was it, that seconded it? Just before I go to you, Councillor Robson, Councillor Arbery, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I think I'm probably not going to support this motion. What I like about what we have in front of us is that it's independent. So the onus really is on the independent observers, and they can make a call on whether this council is performing well enough to be off-ramped. If they come in and they go, well, there's no real issues here, we've been here 4 weeks, we don't really have anything further to stick around for, then of course they're not going to stick around if they don't need to. I don't think that's a call that council should be making. My preference would be for us to meddle in this process as little as possible and leave it as independent as possible. And I also think it's a little bit disingenuous to the ratepayer to say this is only a 4-week process because we're probably going to work together when, I'd be bearish on that outlook. I think the more likely option is that we will require them for the full 9 months, and I think it's only fair to the ratepayers that we're transparent with what the cost of the worst case outcome is. If we don't need them for the full 9 months, then we don't have to spend that money, and you're not required to spend a budget. You only have to spend what is needed.
Thank you, Councillor Arbery. Councillor Robson.
Question through the chair to the Chief Executive or staff. The contract for services that will be entered into, will it have the ability for break? What will the impact of breakage be? You contract someone for 9 months and then you decide after a month that it's all good, and you don't need them anymore. There's normally a breakage clause. Conversely, of course, if you're relying on them to decide whether they need you or not, my experience of certain people in professional services, not myself of course, is they're quite inclined to find good reasons for hanging around for 9 months, indeed in some cases 9 years, because it produces a revenue stream for them. It places them in a highly conflicted situation. But then I have significant experience in the professional services industry. So, yeah, clarification. Will there be break clauses in the contract for service, and what will be the basis of invoking those break clauses, and what will be the financial implications should those break clauses, if they are indeed there, and if they are indeed invoked, what will be the financial consequences of such? We have been here before dealing with an external agency where significant discussion was had by this council with regard to working with that professional services agency, and council was somewhat surprised to learn in that room on an overhead in the top right hand corner that what they thought was a sort of MOU type situation with no commitment in fact came with a sort of close to $500,000 bill. We wouldn't want to repeat that. There are 3 questions.
Perhaps I can address the issue by saying that this is a voluntary process that council is entering into, so at any stage council could resolve not to continue with this process. So I think, Councillor Clout, that option is available throughout the duration of this process. Secondly, any arrangements in terms of appointing people to support this process would need to take that into consideration. Does that address? I know you had 3, but I think I might have wrapped it up with 2 answers.
Clarify, the contract for services would have express break clauses, and we would be aware at the point of entering into that contract what the costs of invoking those break clauses would be.
Yes, given that this is a process that council could choose by resolution to stop at any point, that would need to be factored in, and all parties would enter into it with that in mind.
Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Chair, question to the Chief Executive. If the resolutions that are on the table, the substantive ones, are passed, well actually even if E is passed, which is not subject of a amendment, would council be able to fund the unbudgeted expenditure of $350,000 from within the governance pool, which is the money that's set aside for extra responsibilities for councillors, etc.? And if not, would Mayor and councillors by resolution today be able to give some form of commitment that they will voluntarily fund that shortfall from their own personal salaries?
I can respond to the first question, but I dare not respond to the second. So all I would say is that in terms of funding this, it is not budgeted. But in saying that, this council spends somewhere in the order of $550 million of public funds every year. And so the $350,000, in my view, would be well spent if the decision-making and efficiency of council is improved. I'm also conscious that the last 2 or 3 months has already cost the organisation many thousands of dollars in terms of legal expenses, additional meetings, significant Lagoima search and requests, and so I believe the sum that we have sought, and picking up on, I think it was your point, or Councillor Arbery's point, just because there's a budget, it doesn't necessarily need to be spent. In my view, this would provide the best possible opportunity to ensure successful outcomes for this council and our community. It would enable us to set this process up appropriately right from the start, with some sort of, I guess, line of sight or surety about a process, establishing a plan, monitoring a plan, and reporting on that plan. And so it does feel as if already there's a wee bit of a stutter. So I would encourage council to push forward, to pursue the resolutions that we've put in front of you, and that, in my view, will set a platform that will enable the greatest chance of success.
Thank you. Councillor Robson.
Councillor Clout has observed in his, and I assume this is in the context of the amendment that the conversation's happening, albeit I know standing orders have been relaxed in terms of speaking more than once, but we are, one assumes, speaking to the amendment. With regard to the amendment, Councillor Clout has indicated that he's open to modifying that. Part of the concern, I understand, in the conversation last night was exactly what the first report of the review and observer team would be. And there was some capturing of some of that conversation in the email that Councillor Clout circulated. I suppose I'm asking Councillor Clout, would he be amenable to his starter for 10 description of what findings he was looking for being included in an amendment or an extended amendment? For those who are not privy to Councillor Clout's email, he suggested that a report coming back from the review and observer team, the first report after 4 to 6 weeks, should include particularly, quote, problem definition, diagnosis of cause or causes of the problem, what does success look like going forward, and proposed action plan. And
I'd be more than happy to include that in the amendment. I was trying to keep it simple, but yes, I'd be more than happy to do that, and I'll email it to Robin.
Thank you. Anyone else, councillors? Councillor Robson.
get the redrafted amendment up on the screen, so I don't know whether everyone's up with what's currently sitting on the floor as an sort of under draft amendment, so it'd be helpful, and certainly
Thank
to
you.
the audience.
We'll take 5 minutes to do that. So I'm just, can you, Kelvin, can you send the email to Robin? She doesn't seem to. Thank you.
I'm happy to speak while
Yeah, well, thank you, Larry. That's a good idea.
Speaking to the amendment that's currently in front of us, I'll make it clear that I wouldn't be supporting the amendment. The idea that within 4 to 6 weeks this might be resolved and they might move on, I think is very, very, very unlikely. I can agree with comments made by some that the ratepayers may be justifiably horrified. They're horrified with what they've seen in released text and emails and other things that have occurred. Some will be horrified about the cost. Some would be willing to pay anything to get our council functioning properly again and addressing the big issues. I'm concerned about the mover of this amendment saying I'm a bit fuzzy about what success looks like. And the process we're starting to get into here is also not a great indicative of our functioning and governance. We've had some time to work on the terms of reference, and one of them, of course, is that does address some of this issue. The 12B of the Review and Observer team will investigate, define and report upon the nature and extent of the problem of dysfunctional governance within council. And until that work is done, and they have done that through time with each of us individually and time observing, which I don't think would occur within 4 to 6 weeks, we won't begin to move forward on the needed corrections. The idea that somehow in 4 to 6 weeks we might all come to an agreement to act differently and behave better. As far as I understand, on the 21st of August we made that commitment, and we've already seen videos being taped and released on social media and so on. So I have no confidence that we've yet owned the problem ourselves and started to operate differently. We need this team in. They are a very experienced team. I don't believe, Councillor Robson, that they are looking for jobs. If you look at their resumes, in fact, it's a shame we're not in confidential just to have a bit of a talk about some of that, but these are not people who are desperate for work. They are fully engaged in many, many different roles around the country and some even internationally. And they're going to come and sit alongside us and give us some very good advice. So I don't support the amendment. It would be up to this team to recommend, yes, we've done well, we're well ahead of where we need to be, and what they can report to the DIA, that they can now be confident that we will fulfil our obligations with the LTP, and that is something the Chief Executive has already indicated is a possibility for us with a future resolution. Thank you. And I guess I can speak again if I need to, because we've relaxed
Indeed you
standard
can.
orders.
Ad infinitum, it seems. Anyone else while we're waiting for the amendment? Councillor Arbery.
Echoing Councillor Morris's point about replacement, I'm in the same boat. I think replacement is the appropriate action. However, the right process for that recommendation is this independent review team. So they can have a look at the behaviours and they can make a call on whether we have the right to serve our community further. I've forgotten my point, but it doesn't matter because I can speak again later. So we'll leave it at that.
Councillor Kitty.
Thank you. I will be supporting the amendment. I think that anything that we can do to save ratepayer money, especially given these financial times, is well worth it. We are all here at this table, okay, for particular reasons that the governance hasn't been working. We are all, I think there's quite a number of us that have been working together well and will continue to do so through this process. I think within 4 to 6 weeks, if the observers have been here, have they outlined the problem, the issues, the challenges that we are facing? I think it really comes down to one question that I could ask you all now, or that you could implant into our heads, is for any of this to work, it relies on all of us having a commitment to work together. Okay, there have been a number of us that have said we can work together, we will work together. And again, all of this is coming down to the fact that can we all do that and can we make that commitment? If we can make that commitment to work together for the best of our community, for the best of our role as governance and for the best of our role as councillors, then in 4 to 6 weeks the problems, issues, challenges should be outlined and there should be a process moving forward of how we can do that, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Morris.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nature abhors a vacuum. In terms of Councillor Arbery's statement about replacement, which I also endorse, and it's a bit of a love fest on this side of the table, That being said, if he's of that view, then that can be addressed right now. You can move that we write to the Department of Internal Affairs and request commissioners. Or that the minister call a general election of mayor and councillors. That is an option for you, if that is how you feel. And yeah.
It's like the new amendment is taking shape.
Yeah, would you like me to speak to this? Yeah. Essentially, the 4 points there will be reported back by the review team within the 4 to 6 weeks. So I would have thought that if this amendment passes, that it becomes just an appendix to the terms of reference. And it's taken into consideration by the review and observer team. That's the way I think we would handle this.
I'll ask a question then. Can you guide us to the terms of reference about that first report? Because I thought it was after the first quarter. They were going to report quarterly, which would be...
Yeah, so there's 2 phases. The way the current terms of reference are drafted, and it could be read that this would be an amendment to those terms of reference, is that the team would within 4 to 6 weeks create a recommended action plan. So the thinking behind this is that they would come in, they would meet with you collectively and individually, assess the situation, and then identify what would be the course forward to have a pathway to improvement. They would deliver that plan within 4 to 6 weeks, and then the concept was a quarterly report, which would be reporting progress against the implementation of the plan and the achievement of the desired outcome. So that's how the terms of reference are framed. So it's paragraphs 23 and 24 on page 11 of your electronic agenda. So it's in the terms of reference. So it's not a report. It's more of it's a plan really. So is what we're suggesting it would be. It's almost a sort of summation of the issues and then a plan being the way forward.
Thank you very much, Christine. Councillor Hughes, followed by Councillor Robson again.
Can I just have a clarification then? So if we take this amendment, it's in 4 to 6 weeks, it'll be up to us. Whereas if we go the other way, if in 4 to 6 weeks, if the team that we bring in decide that we need to spend more time with them, then it'll be up to them. But if they decide at that point that they don't need to spend more time with us, then they will finish the process. Is that correct?
Through the chair, look, this is entirely up to council to continue or discontinue this process at any stage. So in 4 to 6 weeks, if there is a report back that council considers satisfies the needs of the Department of Internal Affairs, it could at that point stop this process.
So supplementary then, just to clarify, this really doesn't change anything. It just explicitly says that this information as an appendix.
I think it highlights a checkpoint, the very first checkpoint of the review and observer team, and I think it just highlights the fact that also that this is a process that council can continue or discontinue at any stage.
Thank you.
Councillor Robson.
Speaking to the amendment, I think what this does is, and we should know this from the history of the city, what this does is it builds the off-ramp early and makes it very, very clear that the off-ramp is there, and that should you choose to take the off-ramp, you don't suddenly have to figure out how you fit it in amongst everything else or start building it with other people having already gone in different directions. I think this off-ramp is important. But I don't see the off-ramp, in a sense, as leading to a cul-de-sac. I see the off-ramp offering other paths. But then I've always been someone who sees possibilities. I don't see the world in black and white. The reason I want the off-ramp is because it may be that in setting this up, we are framing it wrong. In conversations I've had, it strikes me that when you have relationship difficulties, you don't go to your lawyers, you go to someone who has experience in conflict resolution between people. Yet, we've gone, as ever, the one professional advisor that's been external to this group has been a lawyer. And personally, as someone who uses lawyers regularly for positive purposes, I would never go in a governance situation such as this first to lawyers. That way lies madness and large bills. So the idea of constructing an off-ramp which opens up the possibility of pursuing different paths, including perhaps if, just say it was identified, just if this was identified as a problem of personalities or lack of role clarity. Any of you who have read the body of work around governance dysfunction will recognise those terms, lack of role clarity, personality issues. If that's the findings in 4 to 6 weeks, then I think the path we're talking about going down is will need a significant amendment, and we'll need significant pause about how we address that. I would take issue also with even the way we're defining this problem as governance dysfunction. I genuinely believe, have publicly stated in front of a potentially reluctant audience, that the annual plan that this council produced under extraordinary pressure, including the governance dysfunction issues, is the best annual plan this city has produced since I arrived here in 2003. So I think we need to be careful about our problem definition. We need to be careful about understanding, having defined it, what the causes are. And I don't see how you can have an action plan without knowing explicitly what those things are. Yeah? If you have rats, you require a different solution to if you have ants, or if you have a large herd of wildebeest galloping across your front lawn, right? Knowing what the problem is defines how you address it. The mayor's currently picturing a herd of wildebeest on my front lawn. Never happened, not likely to. But yeah, this off-ramp I think is important. It doesn't lead to a cul-de-sac. We need to be flexible. Why would we not put this in place? And there is an irony that one of the reasons we've gone down the carrot, council-appointed reserve and observer team, carrot rather than stick approach, DIA, is to retain some control. So to argue that we should abdicate control and at the same time support supposedly this process suggests that there's some fuzzy thinking in some parts of the room, right? Slowly, incrementally, carefully, conserving ratepayer resource, let's figure out what the issues are and then find the best way of addressing them. And just to state what I started with in supporting this amendment, if you have issues in relationships, my personal advice to you in your professional life and your personal life is don't start with a lawyer. It won't end well.
Thank you for that very sage advice, Councillor Robson. Councillor Baldock.
I may speak again. I will reiterate that 12 days ago we unanimously embarked on this course of action, and now we're making speeches about off-ramps. I think 6 weeks is just too soon to have that. But the Chief Executive has already made it clear that we can vote for an off-ramp anytime we like, because we are still in control, but we want independent advice and independent analysis, and that needs more than 4 to 6 weeks. They will spend that much time getting to grips with the analysis of what is 12B, then they will develop a recommended action plan. If there is to be a formal process of which we review, it ought to be after that first quarter of the action plan, because they won't know whether we have committed to the action plan to make changes. So I would be inclined to support some wording if it makes people a little more comfortable that after the first quarter of that action plan we may have a review. But I think everything is covered already. There is, and the other points that are there, the bullet points, they're all there in the terms of reference anyway. This is what they will be coming to sit alongside us to do.
Thanks very much, Councillor Baldock.
Just to conclude, I'm beginning to wonder if they're watching this, whether we're going to get anybody to sign up to this process.
Thank you. Any other councillors?
Do I have some volunteers who are willing to step into this process should Councillor Baldock be unable to find them in his Rolodex?
I'm sure you do. I'm sure your Rolodex is a fascinating place to be. Let's do that. Councillor Granger, did you flinch? Have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I just want to throw my tuppence worth in too. And thanks, Chair. First of all, where do I start? And all I can say is I'm quite appalled that this has got to this level it has. In the 13 years of experience that I've had, it never has ever got to this level. Spending $350,000, quite gut-wrenching for me. And not only to me, just the community as well. Kelvin, I could say thanks for bringing your idea forward. If I was the ratepayer out there and saw something like that, I think I'd be putting the tick in the box as well to support that. I want to make this very, very clear as regards to this amendment. And that's what I want to do, not only for us, but to the community as well. And many times in the past, for me, I've been asked by the community, I didn't realise, Bill, that something was built into your resolution you passed. This is giving them a bit of clarity as well. And I think that's very, very, very important. So, all in all, I'm supporting this amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else? In that case, I will put the amendment to you, to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? One against. Any abstentions? And carried. That now becomes part of the substantive motion. And as I recall, the mover of the substantive motion was who? Remind me, sorry. It was you, yeah. Did you want to speak to that now, Larry? I thought we had relaxed.
Yeah, well, I will have a right reply.
Okay. John.
I'd like to move an amendment with regard to the terms of reference 12E. I'd like to delete the words after making. Yes, yeah, the second making. Apologies.
Thanks, John.
Councillor Hollis, you're speaking to, I think it's dangerous territory. Guidance or advice frequently strays. We've recently had a number of meetings where basically standing orders and the process of debate has been pretty heavily, how can I put it? Well, there are questions about the delineation between governance and the independence and purity of their decision making and the interjections and observations and guidance and from people who aren't elected representatives. This wording, in my view, is far too broad, and I have frequently seen professional advisors stray. It's one of my concerns that they bring their own prejudices and biases to situations. I've frequently seen, in my experience in this chamber, professional advisors, I believe, stray well outside their brief and give advice and guidance that is clearly political, in inverted quotes, inverted commas. So unless someone's got a clear, unequivocal, unarguable definition for those broad terms, guidance or advice, I think there is far too much risk in them being there, and we open ourselves to polluting our own very pure processes.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? All those in favour of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. Against, abstentions and carried. That now comes a part of the substantive. Does anybody that hasn't spoken on the substantive want to speak? You're reserving, Larry, for now. Kelvin, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've always supported this review and observer team coming in. I think it's definitely preferable to us invoking central government, or them invoking themselves into our processes. So, and as I said when we're talking about the amendment, the $350,000 is a very big concern to me. And hence the intent of my amendment was just to clarify what effectively is already in the terms of reference, but just to really make it clear that we do need an off-ramp. And effectively, my belief and my hope is that the 11 of us sitting around this table, after 4 to 6 weeks, we should be able to commit to working collaboratively together. And if we can't after 4 to 6 weeks, then we are in big trouble. And so that would be my hope, that this can be circumvented, this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Robson.
Look, I think I'm with Councillor Arbery to a point. I'm a little bit bearish. 102 kg bear. My apologies to my scales. I'm not certain that we'd have resolution 4 to 6 weeks. As a matter of fact, I'd bet a small dinner at Macau that we won't. However, we do need clarity about what the issues are, and we do need to buy into at least the problem definition. It's a bit like multimodal traffic. We all know what the problem is, but we may have different views about how we address it. Some may think cycleways are the answer. Some may think we should concrete the entire city, get rid of the green stuff. Neither of those positions have my unqualified support. So, working our way forward, I think that's critical that we get to that point, and then whatever flows from that, flows from that. And it will be difficult for some of us. It may be confronting for some of us what that team produces. The process needs breakpoints, because the moment you do externalise things, you do lose some element of control, and there's no guarantee that you've got the right doctor or the right professional. I think our council is at the bleeding edge of governance and local government in this. I think the Lagoima process was compromised. The independent legal advice I'm getting, and have so far, suggests that some decisions that have been made haven't been productive, and while they might be able to be defended, they are equally able to be challenged. Whether anyone will be prepared to go to court to get a definitive judgment would be a function of someone's wealth and, I suppose, passion. I think the process as it's outlined isn't a bad one. I think the intent of the people putting this process together is good. But I do think we're at the edge of the experience of local government. We are there with Lagoimas, and there are more coming. There are more coming. And you know, I comment on the Lagoima issue as someone who, if you like, came out of it relatively, in some ways, unscathed. There were comments made about me, but no comments from me derogatory about my colleagues. So this is not a case of me having a vested interest against a process. This process here, if it doesn't identify the right causes, my position will remain as it was at the previous meeting, that, you know, I'm happy to support it in its intent and happy to go with it, but if at some point I feel it has lost its way, I'm out. So far, thanks to the amendments, so good.
Councillor Granger.
Yeah, thank you. What am I going to say? First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Heidi Hughes next to me here. And just a short burst she said as regards to saying we have to move on. And I totally support that. Of course we have to move on. And I just feel that with this process, I do hope this will make it happen. Councillor Baldock, as regards to you saying that it's going to be very, 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 that's 3 varies in there, and likely to be sorted within 4 to 6 weeks. So what I'll say in return is that I won't put any varies in, I'll just say it is likely, I feel, to be solved in 4 to 6 weeks. But I support this.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm hopeful, as always, embarking on this process that we will get to a better outcome for our city, because we live in a beautiful city and our residents do deserve better from us around this table. They are the ones who are relying on us to make good decisions on their behalf. That's why we were elected here. We weren't elected here to sort of push our own egos or to scrap amongst ourselves. We were here to serve first and foremost our residents. And you look at some of the other cities around the world and even around New Zealand, and you just look out this window this morning and you go, yeah, we have a beautiful city. So I think it's worth remembering that. In terms of the overall cost, you know, the $350,000, yes, it is small when you compare it with council's annual operating expenses or capital expenses. And it's certainly much smaller when you consider the billions that are at stake in a long-term plan. However, where those costs lie is an indication of taking responsibility. It's an indication of the preparedness around this table to lead, to show leadership, and to take responsibility. I think our city is crying out for its elected members to take responsibility and show leadership. If the Mayor and councillors were prepared to fund the unbudgeted expenditure of $350,000 themselves, that would provide a powerful incentive to resolve things very quickly, within 4 to 6 weeks, rather than 9 months or longer, wouldn't you think? I know some people have a much greater financial means than myself, and I'm sure they would have no problem or concern in funding their share. So, in that spirit, I move a new G, that Tauranga City Council Mayor and councillors fund from their own personal salaries $350,000 towards the cost of the review and observer team.
Can I get a seconder for that?
For purposes of discussion, Your Worship, so people have an opportunity to outline their personal positions, I'm happy to second this for the purposes of discussion.
Just before we go ahead with this, Coral, can we just get some clarification from you on the process of paying for this, if that comes to be? Are we actually able to do this?
It's my understanding that you can't legally do that. The Remuneration Authority states that the money has to be paid to you. We're required to give the whole of the pool and to give it to you. So it's my understanding, I mean I could double check that, but I don't think just off the top of my head that you can actually do that.
Clarification. Just in that situation, I understand at least one elected member has offered up publicly a salary sacrifice for some period for a greater good. Is that process happening at the moment? Is someone sacrificing salary at the moment? Because that would suggest that it is able to be done. So I'm just trying to get clarification of whether, if it's possible to sacrifice salary for some charitable purpose, well, what greater purpose can we have than the people of the city or saving them a bill? So can we get clarification whether that's actually occurring at the moment anywhere?
Councillor Robson, I think you'll find that the ability to do what was done previously was about COVID-19 and about particularly about lockdown and about the impact of COVID and the lockdown on the economy. I think you'll find that that is a very specific opportunity that may have come and gone.
That's the one we all got from the Remuneration Authority.
I beg pardon?
So are we talking about the one we got from the Remuneration Authority, that
Yes,
decision?
for those of us that wanted to take a pay cut, and some did, and then we would discover that we were able to give it to a charity of our choosing, and some did. I don't think this would qualify for that. I stand to be corrected, but Coral, if...
Yes, so the Remuneration Authority did have a further determination about COVID, so they set what the salary reduction was for each councillor, as you'll recall, and they took into account when they did that some of the donations that councillors had already made. So they interviewed councillors individually, and there was some distinction between councillors based on their previous donations. So that was a legal determination that came through for COVID. Yes, I would have to double check with the Remuneration Authority whether you would be legally allowed to use your money that way.
For clarity, no one donated over and above what the Remuneration Authority said they should donate.
They might have. It wasn't public information, but they might have.
But if they're able to donate over and above what the Remuneration Authority says, then surely we're able to donate at any time for any cause.
Councillor Baldock.
I believe we would need legal opinion, and maybe Nick can, but I don't believe this council can, by resolution, deduct money from my pay or force me to donate money that I do not wish to donate. Councillor Morris may donate his own money if he wishes, and anyone else, but I doubt that a resolution that isn't unanimous here would carry any weight legally, since the Remuneration Authority has already made it clear we couldn't individually decide on the COVID issue, and I think that's why the resolution, the amendment cannot stand, really. It's not in our power to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, that's correct, Larry.
Thank you.
That's not to say that individuals could not donate, and perhaps that's... Yeah.
Thank you, and I know that members reading the Legoimas may have instructed payroll to take money and give it to a particular cause. That being said, I would be happy to amend my resolution that is up there to read that Tauranga City Council requests the Remuneration Authority determine that mayor and councillors have a reduction of $350,000 from their salaries. That would get over the legal impediment that some have raised, and it would show leadership and responsibility being taken around this table.
Assuming that's can be done, is there a seconder?
Councillor Robson would like to agree to that.
I'll agree to second that again for the purpose of discussion.
Yeah, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Arbery.
Yeah, I agree with the intention here, but I think it might encourage perverse outcomes. So if we're trying to get to a place where we're working together, and if we're incentivised to cancel this, or if we're incentivised to, kick them out after 2 weeks to protect our own pocket, we might risk getting rid of the independent observers and finding ourselves in the same situation 2 months down the line. So, again, I'd say, personally, I think we've lost the right to serve the city as a group, and I think the right call is for us to step aside, but because we're all donkey deep in this mess, I think that needs to be a decision or a recommendation from an independent observer rather than someone who's right in this and obviously has biases. But that would obviously address some of those concerns by the ratepayers. I think this will give them a bit of confidence that we are addressing this, and particularly if you're central government and you've just invested a few $100 million in the Tauranga Northern Link, and then a few tens of millions in Cameron Road, and you're looking at your investment and you're looking at who's governing that investment or who's involved in that decision making, you're going to want some certainty that they're going to make good decisions, and you don't want them to be incentivised to get rid of the independence at the first opportunity to save their own pocket, particularly if we're all in different situations. Not everyone can necessarily afford that without maybe making some sacrifices for their family, and they might put their family ahead of the right thing for the city. So I think that's an unfair position to put people in.
Thank you very much, Yako. Councillor Kitty.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can see both points here from both of you. I know that we have taken a salary reduction already up until January, I think that is. No, I didn't declare what my husband or my family do for charity. We do things in different ways, but I was happy to take the Remuneration Authority's pay cut again until January. I see exactly, Councillor Morris, what you're trying to achieve with this, that this money should not be going back to the ratepayer. We are here to govern the city. I do also agree with Councillor Robson's debate before, that we did work incredibly well when we are here in the chambers. We have managed to come to a lot of decisions around the AP, whether we agreed with it or not. Again, I am going to read a quote that I've got written down. I don't know it exactly off my head, but good leadership requires you to surround yourself with people of diverse perspectives who disagree with you without the fear of retaliation. Okay, in here, in the chambers, we do seem to be able to do that, make decisions and move forward. The past is but a thought, the future's an illusion. I've said this before. This is the present, right here, right now. This is it. This is what we are addressing. I see exactly what you're meaning too, Councillor Arbery. We certainly don't want people rushing this decision because of financial implications. This is critical for our city to move forward. It is over to us. We are the governance body here. We have let our city down. There are a number of us, I'd like to think all of us, working differently, separately, together on occasion for the city. I know that we are out there working in our wards and for our city at large. I would like to think that the community can have some faith that we are doing that. They do see us around and about. They do see us doing positive things. It appears to be that it's only the negative that is reported. That is unfortunate. It would be really nice to see us all collaborating together, doing the nice photos, okay, the nice things, the nice positive outcomes that we can all achieve. I would like to think that we can do that in 4 to 6 weeks. I'd like to think that the observers can come in, that they can see where the underlying issues are, and that we can make a positive move forward. If the salary, if this comes back from Remuneration Authority, that we can do that, great. Then it is not coming out of ratepayer money. Thank you.
Councillor Cloud.
Thank you. Fully endorse what Councillor Kitty has just said in terms of the, I think, very good positive work that generally councillors do, councillors and mayor of our city. And I think it's a noble gesture that Councillor Morris is offering. But my fear would be that if every time there was a governance stuff-up, we might call it, and there was issues that resulted in the ratepayer, being significantly out of pocket. If as a result of that, every single elected member had to dig out of their own pocket, effectively sacrificing their salary, they could get down to a salary of zero. I fear that there would be no one putting their hands up at the next election, and this council would be governance-less. Yeah. Sorry, I'll get that word to you shortly.
Are there any other speakers? I'll put the... Larry.
I won't support it. I think, for a start, I don't think the Remuneration Authority would consider it, but it is, for a lot of good reasons that have been stated already, it may be what some feel is a necessary step to take to try and clear things with their constituents and the ratepayers, but the reality is this is going to cost, and we have to face it and move on and get to a better level and a better place. And what and who pays for it, I'll cover in my right of reply.
Thanks, Larry. Bill.
Yeah, just a question through the chair to Councillor Morris. In that case, wouldn't it be best then to include, where you say here, an issue a new determination deducting up to $350,000. And why I say that is that there's that likely, I won't say very, possibility that it could be cleaned up within 4 to 6 weeks.
Thank you. I'm happy to respond to that. I think the Remuneration Authority would need a figure, so it would need to be a figure such as that. However, if someone was prepared to move a lesser figure, then that might be something which the council should entertain. Can I just say that as a teenager, I worked at BP Papamoa, which was a great employer, and one of our Takawainga unit's members is the sister of my former boss, and earning the princely sum of $7.40 an hour while working there as a teenager, I was required to, out of my own pocket, pay a motorist fuel bill when I overfilled his car. Now, some would say that's a bit harsh. Poor Steve on $7.40 an hour having to pay the overfill on the person's car, but I never did it again.
Fascinating. Anyone else before I put the Councillor Morris's amendment to you? And bearing in mind that this may not be able to be legally upheld, but we'll do it anyway. All those in favour, please say aye. And can I see a show of hands, please? Councillor Kitty. And Councillors Morris. Against? Show of hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, and abstentions. I think there's 2. If my maths is correct, and indeed there are. Councillors Hollis and Robson. Right, well, that is lost, which takes us back to the substantive motion. Councillor Baldock.
If there are no more speakers or amendments, it's unfortunate we spend a lot of time talking about money today, but hope the public don't see that as what we're really about. In the attachments today, there are 4 pages of decisions which we need to be making for the LTP in the coming year. And there are some very, very serious matters in there. I am sure that will lead us into robust, sometimes feisty debate as we seek to represent the people we think elected us and do the things we think are right for the city. We are going to need, I believe, given what has gone on in the first 8 months of our term, we are going to need some assistance to get through that, and I welcome this being set up, and the costs will lie where they lie. We already know now that there is no way to avoid it. Whether we had commissioners, whether the minister intervened, the costs will still sit with the ratepayer. Perhaps with commissioners, where we would be still elected members but not functioning and would not be paid, we might think that there is a saving, but actually the cost of commissioners coming in is much more, I would believe, and suggest than what we receive in our remunerations. So we just need to get on with it. We need to, I think, appreciate from day one that the people coming that are recommended in here, and it will be finally chosen by the chair of the review team, are experts in many fields that we could benefit from. None of us are beyond needing some good advice along the way. And I personally look forward to working with some of these people for, I think, probably through until June. We may reduce their involvement, but I think the Minister has already signalled through the DIA that they want us to perform better, and I'm keen to make that commitment. If a member who sent me an apology the day before the Lagoimas were going to be released for all the things that had been said and those things, wishes to make a contribution towards the cost, he is entitled to, as any one of us is. But I think I'm pleased that we've avoided what looked like a bit of a showcase of something which doesn't mean we all own what we have participated in.
Thanks, Larry. That was the right of reply. I understand that standing orders have been suspended, but in the circumstances, I will put the recommendations to you, Council. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Any abstentions? It's carried. And I'd just like to move in a second to reinstate standing orders so we can... thank you, Kelvin. And Tina seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? And carried. Thank you very much. We are now going into... Yeah. Can we just have a mover and a seconder to move us into public excluded, please? Tina, thank you. Seconded by... I'll second it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? And carried. We are now in public excluded. Thank you very much. Oh, Linda, other than Linda, thank you very much, Linda, if you could